Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to have a look at the new audio API, which is an update to how we go about tweaking, changing and stopping our sounds in Crayta. So what I'm talking about is playing around with sound whilst the game is running. And previously some of these things weren't possible, and previously some of these things were possible. There was just a different way of doing it. So it's a worthwhile thing to update your knowledge of the changes of the API. Now, if you just want to know a little bit more about the API, you can head over to api.crayta.com. And what we're going to be looking at today is the sound handle section. This is all about how to modify the sounds that you play using scripting in Crayta. So because we're going to be using scripting, I'll be using advanced mode, which means you need to have a keyboard and mouse, and you need to be in create mode. To start with, I have this island with some sirens that are trying to lure ships into the rocks. And at the moment, you know, they're doing their thing, but I can amp things up by playing a sound. I'm also turning on a bunch of lights and making it into a little bit of a rock show. So the way I've done that is by using the same API call that we already had, self get entity, play sound, and then passing through a reference to a sound asset. I can also stop the sound, which is doing the same as it was before, self get entity, stop sound, and passing the reference to the playing sound. But we can now also increase and decrease the volume. We can tweak the pitch by increasing and decreasing that, and we can even change the range of the sound. So let's have a look at how we go about doing that. This is a great opportunity for adding a little bit more creative flair into your game, also increasing the value of your game, the feeling of the immersion within your game, and just having a bit of good fun with some of the sound library and seeing what other sounds you can make out of the huge bank of sounds that already exists. So to get started, to play a sound, it's the same as before. Self get entity, play sound. So you're calling the play sound function on the entity, and you need to pass through a sound asset property. So I've got my sound asset up here, and that's what I'm using to play the sound. When that function runs, it returns a reference to the playing sound, which is called a handle. So I'm capturing that reference in this class level variable, or this class level property here, self.soundHandle. So that now contains a reference to that playing sound. To stop the sound, I can use the same method I used to with the old API calls. Self get entity, stop sound, and then pass through the sound handle, that reference to the playing sound I was talking about. But we can actually do a different method now. So if I comment that out, I can do self.soundHandle stop. And this means it will just stop the sound. But it's the only difference between these two lines of code is just how they read from our perspective as a coder. Behind the scenes, they're doing exactly the same. It just means that now we're performing an action on this specific reference, and that's how it reads, rather than performing an action on the entity which refers to that reference. So I think it's a little bit easier to understand this way around. And so this is how I would suggest you do it moving forward. We can also do other things. We can increase and decrease the volume. If we go to the API docs, you can see that there's this set volume command. So how do we go about doing that? Well, to start with, I've set up some properties to handle increasing and decreasing the volume. So if I click on this speaker, you can see that I've got volume set to 1 and volume step set to 0.1. So what I want to do is when I play this sound, I want to make sure that it's playing at the correct volume. Now, there was previously you could do that in the play sound function by sending through a table of properties of exactly how you wanted to play that sound. But now there's a slightly easier way where we can do self.soundHandle set volume. And then we just pass through the number that we want the volume to be, self.properties.volume, which refers to this property I've set up over here. We can also increase and decrease the volume. So let's have a look at that. To increase the volume, firstly, I will increase the value of what is stored in the volume property. Self.properties.volume equals self.properties dot volume plus, and the amount I want to increase it by, I've actually set up as a second variable, a second property here called volume step. Self.properties.volume step. Which means that where volume is 1, the new volume will be 1 plus whatever the volume step was, which is 0.1. So 1 plus 0.1 is 1.1, and that will then get stored in our volume. The next time I run this, our volume will be 1.1, and so it'll increase by another 0.1 to be 1.2, and so on. That's all well and good, but let's make sure that we're also updating our sound handle with the new volume. Set volume, and let's pass through that volume. So we're updating that property, and then we're sending the new value to the sound that's playing. We can do really similar in decrease volume. So I'm going to copy those 2 lines of code, and I'm just going to change this add to a subtract. This now means that decrease volume will reduce the volume of the sound, and increase volume function will increase the volume of the sound. These 2 functions are already hooked up to these 2 buttons in their bindings. If I click on this one, for example, you can see it's already hooked up. So let's give it a test. So to test the volume controls, firstly I need to play the sound, and let's decrease the volume by interacting with this button here, and I can increase the volume by interacting with this button here. So that's given me as a player a bit of control over the volume of the sound, and if I can make that a core part of the gameplay mechanic as well, all the better. Now let's think about increasing and decreasing pitch. So these 2 buttons are already hooked up. Let's make sure that firstly we set the pitch just like we set the volume, so that the pitch starts at the correct pitch that we want. At the moment, the default pitch that I've set it to is 1, so I want the sound to be playing at 1. Although if I wanted to and change this number on maybe a different entity in my game, I might also want this functionality clear here. So self.soundHandle, set pitch, and let's pass through that property, self.property.pitch. So when the sound starts playing, we are now setting the sound's volume and the sound's pitch. This script will be available as Andy's sound control. It'll be available in the packages, so you'll be able to download this and add it to your game if you lose track of what's going on here, or you don't want to code it yourself. Self.soundhandle :set pitch. And now that we've done that, we also need to write some code in these 2 functions to increase and decrease the pitch. And we're going to do it in a really similar way to how we increased and decreased the volume. Self.properties.pitch equals self.properties.pitch plus, and I've got a separate variable here, a separate property here called pitch step. Just like the volume step, we'll use that pitch step, and that will change how much we increment pitch by. Let's also not forget to update our sound handle with the new pitch, self.properties. And I'll copy all of that code, paste it in the decrease pitch function, and change the addition to subtraction. And let's give that a test. So to start with, let's play the sound. And let's try decreasing the pitch. Interesting. Ah, I see what I did here. Let's actually call the set pitch function. Okay. We need to call the set pitch function in order to change the pitch. So now, when I interact with the pitch down button, we can hear the music decreasing in pitch, so it gets slower and it also gets lower. If I'm trying to decrease it below 0, it won't actually do that. So just bear that in mind. It will maintain that it has to be above 0. Let's increase the pitch. Similarly, when we increase the pitch, there is only a certain ceiling of how high our pitch can go. Cool. So the last thing I want to take a look at is this other function called set range, and we're going to do that in a boost. So to start with, let's have a look at the next properties, range and boost range. So by default, this sound should be playing with a range of 400. If we grab any sound here, you can see that we've got the range of 400, which is this inner sphere here. And within that sphere, the sound will be full volume. Outside of that, we've got this fall off sphere here. And so at this point, anything outside of that sphere, the sound will be at 0 volume. And then we'll have a smooth gradient of volume as we get closer to the sound. So here it's 1 and here it's 0. And it will gradually fade in as you move closer to the sound until you're in that inner sphere and it's 1. So that's what the range min and range fall off mean in our sound. And so we can change the range. We can change the range min and the fall off using the new sound handle. So let's do that in boost. But first, let's make sure that we're doing that when we play the sound. So self.sound handle, set range. And again, I've got two properties here already set up. So the first one is the range, which is going to be my range min. Self.properties.range min range. And the second one I've got is fall off, which is already there. Self.properties.fall off. So that's the range that we're going to set our sound to start with. And let's just play that for now and just make sure that that's all up and running. So when I click the lever, should be able to hear now that the range, I'm in the fall off here, and the sound is actually full volume a lot closer. So as I move away, can't hear the sound anymore. That's not very good for passing ships, because they're not going to be lured in by our disco show if they can't hear the glorious hair rock. So let's add some boost functionality. We are going to change the range so that it is using, rather than using this range value here, which is only 400, when you press the boost button, I want to boost that range to 2000. So let's get the sound handle, reference to the sound, the playing sound, and let's do set range, self.properties.boost range. And we'll keep the fall off the same, self.properties.fall off. So now, when I press this boost button here, it should increase the range of the sound. Let's try it out. So firstly, let's play the sound. It's a bit quiet where I am next to this boost button. So if we interact. And now I can be much further away and it's still loud. It's still volume of 1. And if I increase that volume, it'll increase that volume above 1, and I can be all the way over here and still hear the glorious hair rock. And that's the updates to the audio API and a few new features added to the sound handle. Now, don't forget, if you've enjoyed this tutorial, it would be worth liking and subscribing to the channel to get new tutorials as new features come out, and where I explore features that already exist that you might not have considered using before in different ways. I hope this has been an interesting and useful tutorial on the new audio features in Crayta. Don't forget to check out the new Battle Pass as well, which is Cursed Galleons, and features lots of pirates and buried treasure and all of that kind of thing. And I look forward to seeing your awesome new DJ games in Crayta.